Today, I have a really interesting pen to show you, and that is the Lamy CP1. One of the reasons I think this pen is so interesting is that it's actually designed by the same person that designed the venerable Lamy 2000. And if you look at these two pens, you can see the resemblance, not just the color, but the design of the clip and just the general aesthetic of the Bauhaus form over function, just very simplistic design. You can see the similarities. So you would think that a pen that looks a bit like the Lamy 2000, designed by the same person as Lamy 2000, would be really popular, especially since it's less than half of the price. But it turns out the Lamy CP1 is an often overlooked, not a particularly great selling pen from Lamy. So I wanted to walk you through the pen and explore why. So starting off, the CP1 is a cross between a 2000 and a Safari. So while it may look like a Lamy 2000, the CP1 has a plastic grip section and uses Lamy's standard stainless steel nib, same as you would find in the Safari. So it's really sort of in between a Safari and a Lamy 2000. I mentioned it's cheaper than the 2000 considerably. It's priced more like a Lamy Studio. You can find it around 50 bucks as the street price. So that's where it stands in Lamy's lineup. There is a flashy version of the CP1. This is called the Platinum version. I don't know why it's called the Platinum version. And maybe the metal color looks like platinum. I'm not sure. This one comes with the excellent 14 karat gold nib, but I believe this model has been discontinued. And I think this model honestly is pretty irrelevant given that this one, when it was available, was priced even more than a Lamy 2000. And I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of this model, but it was cool. But even more overlooked than the standard CP1. So today we'll focus on the standard version. And if you're curious, I actually did not buy this one with my own money. This one was a gift from a friend for the holidays a few years ago. So I really do like this pen. I think it addresses some of the shortcomings that I'll talk about with the standard CP1, but I can understand why this just wasn't a great seller in Lamy's lineup. So in terms of the CP1, so this pen looks even simpler than the 2000. It's even cleaner. It's got just the same color scheme throughout. The cap is friction fit, feels pretty nice. There's actually not a pen that is really similar to this in Lamy's lineup. The closest pen I could find is the Waterman, what is this model called? The Hemisphere? I actually don't remember what this model is called, but this is one of Waterman's mid-tier fountain pens. This one is one of the less expensive models that is made in France. So I believe pens that are priced lower than this from Waterman's lineup are made in Asia. This pen is similar to the CP1 in that they're both very narrow. They both have steel nibs. They're both made in Europe, and they both have plastic sections. So this is the closest pen I could find to the Lamy CP1 if you wanted a reference of what the pen is like. The problem I have with the CP1, and I think it's the same problem that other people have with the CP1, is that it just looks too plain. Even if people were looking for a thin fountain pen, and if you compare it to Lamy 2000, you can see the CP1 is quite a skinny pen. The problem is it just doesn't look like something that should cost over $50. The Waterman, on the other hand, has more flair. It has, these interesting shapes. It has these interesting colors. It has a band that says Paris and Waterman. So even though the Waterman is about the same thickness as the CP1, people might look at it and understand why this pen costs what it does. But the CP1, upon first glance, it doesn't strike you as something that should cost this much. If you compare it to the Safari, even though the Safari looks very minimalist, it still has an interesting shape. It has, some interesting polishing in the front. It has an interesting texture, and then the shape of the pen has some character to it. When you open the pen, the section here made out of stainless steel, it just gives off a feeling of quality that the CP1 does not. So to bring that point home a little bit, I think the CP1 looks a lot like any run-of-the-mill $3 to $4 pen that you might find in your neighborhood box store. So it just doesn't give off the feeling that it should cost what it does. So that's my first issue with the pen. The other issue is, while the pen overall feels very well built, the clip is very nice, it's spring-loaded, the clip, the snap cap mechanism feels very premium. The body is made out of, I think it's brass, but it's made out of metal. It feels pretty nice in the hand. There are some touches that just feel cheap. One is this end cap. This end cap is plastic, and it just doesn't look great. The reason why this is here is that when you post the pen, it's there so that it clips into place in the back. But this being plastic, it just doesn't feel like it belongs in a pen of this price range. It's not nice plastic either. This just comes off. You can just pull this off. It's a really cheaply made material in the back here that it just isn't very nice. Related to that is the section. I personally don't like skinny pens. I find larger pens more comfortable to hold, but I understand some people prefer thinner pens. My problem with this pen is not the thinness. I can understand people who like thinner pens. My problem is that the section is this very cheap feeling plastic. This reminds me of the plastic that Lamy uses in the, I think it's called the Tipo, the capless roller ball. That's one of the cheapest pens Lamy makes. It feels like that. It feels like a very cheap material that just is not very pleasant to hold. That has another issue, which is that the back of the pen is made out of metal. So the end just feels too light. The pen feels back weighted when it's not even posted. That's the same problem that you would find in pens like the Pilot Metropolitan, where the section is a very light material, but the barrel of the pen is a heavier material. That just doesn't have a great balance. So regardless of the fact that the pen is thin, the section just does not feel like a very premium material. And for that reason, I actually find the much less expensive Lamy Safari to be a much more pleasant pen to use. Because even though the section is also plastic, the quality of the plastic, the shape of the plastic, it feels nicer in the hand to me than the CP1. So overall, I just don't think the CP1 looks or feels like a pen that's worthy of the price point. So understandably, it's understandable to me why the CP1 doesn't sell in as great of numbers as Lamy might prefer. So lastly, I just wanted to do a quick writing sample. This is just a standard Lamy steel nib, so there's nothing really special to see here. But I'll just give a quick writing sample so you can see what it looks like to write. So this is the Lamy CP1. This is a medium steel nib. And this is Lamy, their turquoise, but I've been calling it Pacific Blue ever since that special edition name that uses this ink several years ago. So this typical Lamy steel nib performance, you can look at my Lamy Safari review. I'll try to remember to link it below if you want my impressions of the Lamy steel nib. I don't think it's a particularly great steel nib. It works. It's very reliable, but it does not have very pleasant feedback, and it does tend to run dry. And the feedback it does have is not consistent in all directions. So in some directions it feels perfectly smooth, in other directions, like on the downstroke, perfectly smooth. Side stroke is actually quite scratchy. So pretty typical Lamy steel nib, nothing to write home about there, nothing special there. From the performance perspective, it is what you'd expect. But overall, while this pen is quite interesting, it is not a replacement of the Lamy 2000, not even close. And for my money, I take the Safari. But it was an interesting pen. Some people have asked me to review this pen, and I had this one lying around. So hopefully that was fun. Thank you for watching, and Happy New Year.